Maya Feayom, Shabbat Shalom, Maya Feayom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Good to have you with us on this Friday night, December 17th. Good to have you in this congregation. For those of you at home as well, it's great to have you with us, joining us whatever time you do. I want to welcome the Larson family and their guests. Tomorrow's Maya's bat mitzvah, and she's been working very, very hard for many, many months to get to this time. Tomorrow morning at 10:30, you can be here. You can watch on the stream. I want to actually also thank Mark Sloter, who is not only streaming this service, but tomorrow morning's service, so that those of you who prefer to watch Maya from your home, especially if you live in another state, you can feel free to do so. So we're glad that you are here for us, with us on this Shabbat. I had my sermon written this morning, which is a big deal for me because I'm usually editing way too late and I'm something of a procrastinator. And I was editing right down to the deadline, or I'm often editing right down to the deadline. So I'm not proud of it, I'm just being honest. But then I got some texts on a day with a big to-do list at the temple, a spoiler alert, most of which did not get done. I received a text from my father-in-law, who's probably watching, that contained audio recordings of interviews with our former president, which were, I guess, leaked to the press today, in which he shared some possibly anti-Semitic comments about half of American Jews and their relationship to Israel. I want to say that I really struggled with this. I struggle with responding to these kinds of dog whistles, right? The publisher does it to sell books. The reporter does it to get PR. The former president does it to get in the news. All of it's part of a big sort of cynical cycle. Not knowing when the interviews took place, or in what context, or if it was in response to some comments made earlier in the week about the former prime minister of Israel, wondering if Jews in the congregation were even paying attention or not, having to catch a story in mid-flight, I had to go back and start part of the day doing some research. Turns out the comments were made as part of a lengthy interview with Barak Ravid, a reporter in Israel and an Israeli journalist who, as I said, conveniently just completed a book about Trump's peace plan and the relationship between Trump, evangelicals, Israel, Jews, and the community, the Jewish community. I haven't read the book. Could be a great book, could be a terrible book, I don't know. And not one who really wants to revisit politics more than necessary, one who wants to state issues. I felt myself sort of torn, right? Because we should try to avoid politics, but when any politician from any political party dabbles in anti-Semitic tropes, intentional or not, does the rabbi touch it? Does the rabbi not touch it? What does the rabbi do? Does the rabbi have an opinion? So in his comments, which really shouldn't even be mentioned, but I'm going to, he states very clearly in the audio recording that evangelical Christians love Israel more than some Jews. He shares the view that Jews used to control Congress, but they don't anymore. That the New York Times is run by Jews and hates Israel, and therefore that's evidence that many American Jews who read the New York Times hate Israel. By the way, the New York Times is not owned by Jews anymore. I learned that, thought it still was. But that's just a diversion. My first question is why the audio comments were never released until this week, once I realized that they weren't a new news story. My guess is this week was chosen to sell more books, which I find equally disturbing, but for an entirely different reason, for an entirely different sermon. So I had a challenge considering that, and I spent a good chunk of this afternoon struggling with the question, if it is just one more ridiculous, outrageous, quick news story and no one catches it, then I should ignore it. I'm just adding to more noise and diversion that separates us. If the story doesn't have legs, most people watching the service at home will have been disrupted from the possibility of a calm and peaceful Shabbat. And I'll have done nothing more than added to more noise, more division, more conflict. If, on the other hand, the story does have legs and is repeated and reprinted over and over, and if it turns out later other rabbis around the country are commenting it, then my members will say, how is it that the rabbi has nothing to say on the bima when a former president of the United States accuses some Jews of being disloyal? What do? The truth is, it's not anything we all really want to talk about. And the truth is that when we talk about topics that are divisive or offensive or meant to divide the American Jewry, they're not really new stories. Really, they're the oldest stories in the world. So I want to take just a few more minutes, and I want to share just a few thoughts about how this transcends the moment-to-moment news cycle. Transcends it. And it's really a nonpartisan message. And the message is that next week we begin a new book of the Torah. We begin the book of Exodus. And we start to end the story of Joseph with today's Torah reading. We begin the story of slavery in Egypt. So let's spend a moment on Joseph, sold into slavery, imprisoned in Egypt, released and moved up through the ranks to become the number 2 man to Pharaoh. Joseph, who guides with Pharaoh Egypt through years of famine. Joseph, who helps the king acquire huge amounts of wealth as he buys up all of the land from the Egyptians in exchange for food and security. That same Joseph, in this week's Torah portion, collects his brothers together, and he blesses his children and grandchildren. And he reminds them that one day they will leave Egypt and they will return to the land of Israel. And we are told that the Egyptians mourn the death of Jacob and Joseph, as Joseph was so important to them. In next week's Torah portion, and in very quick fashion at the beginning of the book of Exodus, we read about a Pharaoh who did not know Joseph. Biblical commentators are divided on whether the Pharaoh had really forgotten the incredible life-saving deeds of Joseph, how he saved the Egyptians, or it is suggested by some that Pharaoh did remember Joseph, but it was no longer convenient or safe to be associated with him. In fact, Rabbi Jill Jacobs of the organization Truah taught me about 2 years ago, me and another bigger group of rabbis, that in her opinion, the Exodus story of Pharaoh is the first story ever of state-sponsored anti-Semitism. A leader who has a use for the Jews gives the Jews a job, the Jews rise up and do him well, and when it's no longer convenient for the king, the Pharaoh, the leader, thrown by the wayside. The Jews show their allegiance as long as they're a good fit for the king. And they have a safe place until they become an albatross around his neck. And then they become an easy scapegoat. Then they become the source of the country's problems. It is a story we encounter throughout Europe. It is a story we encounter throughout Jewish history. It is a story we have encountered still in recent decades around the world. We are the convenient outsiders to blame. So I don't want to take too much time to revisit a story that should no longer have the power to shock us, because it's a story we about our history. So the strategy the former president uses, divide and conquer, is a political strategy that all politicians use. And he's not the first, and I don't believe he'll be the last American politician to dabble in that. And he's certainly not the only American politician in any party, anywhere in the political spectrum, to edge toward the line of anti-Semitic statements for personal gain. Despite what we hear on the news some days, Jew hatred is not an issue owned by the right or the left. It is an equal opportunity crime. So I would be just as happy as I thought I was done last January if I didn't have to bring these statements to you. Regardless of your politics, I prefer not to have to speak of this. But what concerns me most about these comments are, first, in addition to their device, a message to his Christian supporters. Whether they choose to listen or not, we'll see. And the lesson is that if you are good supporters, you are good and loyal Jews. And if you are not, then you're expendable because you're bad Jews. You're not our Jews. You're the other. This is especially dangerous, and sadly, in our current siloed country, you and I have limited control over how divisive messages are heard from bigots on the right or on the left. There's only so much we can do. That it gets in the way of a thoughtful and articulate and nuanced conversation about Israel. We can love Israel completely and agree or disagree with things any individual government does. We can be committed to visiting, supporting financially, to changing it or not changing it. We can believe we should be totally involved or never involved in its affairs. We can debate whether it should be a secular country, a religious country, or even a democratic state. And we can still love and be committed to the idea of Israel as a real and challenging and beautiful place. There are a spectrum of views and a healthy conversation to be had. And there are people who are critical of Israel because they hate Israel and hate Jews. And there are people who are critical of Israel because they fight for a different type of Israel. Comments like these that we find across the political spectrum do not lead to thoughtful or intelligent conversation. When we boil our conversation down to you are with us or you are against us, you are loyal or you are disloyal, it becomes a very dangerous place for us as American Jews. And so tonight, just to get it out of the way, I say to those members of my congregation who hold views to the right of mine, if you hear this story on the news, don't just seek out a diversion. Don't rush to find another distracting story about another anti-Semitic congresswoman on the left, as if her hatred makes his hatred acceptable. They're all equally toxic. And yes, there are plenty of Jew haters on the left and right, and there are plenty of Israel haters among the Democrats and the Republicans. And there is also no honest way to spin those kinds of statements that Jews used to control Congress, that Jews control the media. And I want to say to my friends who are to the left of me, that those congregants in our congregation who may disagree with you and have different views on abortion or guns or taxation or Israel are no less Jewish and no less good people than you. I want to say to all of us that there are intelligent conversations to be had. Life and death conversations. To don't help us. And they have the potential to do nothing but separate us. So let us not just forward all those comments. Let us move toward intelligent conversations about important issues. For those of you at home I've upset tonight, I hope and pray that I do not have to return to these kinds of conversations again. I am sorry that for 2,000 years, wherever we live, the world just keeps returning to them. And all we can really control is what we do to our neighbors and among each other. To those of you who are on the Trump-obsessed left, I say to you, it's time to take a deep breath. It's time to turn off your phone or shut down your computer, at least for 24 hours, and go for a walk. These issues are bigger than him and our obsession with him, and they're not part of the real conversation that we should be having. The obsession hurts us, and it does not help Israel. And I say to all of us, it's Shabbat. It is time to leave these things behind, as they will still be there when we return to our phones on another day, and our texts, and our tweets, and our news stations. We have our work cut out for us because the threats that are out there are real. The divisive comments, the hate for Jews and Israel, across the political spectrum. We have to acknowledge them, but we can't become distracted by each one of them. There are conversations to be had, and these kinds of things just pull us backward, and they make our work, important work, so much harder to do. May we all, as one congregation, as one Jewish people, strive for conversation, strive for understanding, work toward that Shabbat rest that returns us recharged to tackle hard work, to be courageous, to understand each other's differences as we strive even for a unity among the American Jewish people. So take a deep breath. Shabbat Shalom. Let's join in some prayer for Shabbat as we prepare for the lighting of Shabbat candles. Great Shabbat candles. Okay, yes, okay. Well, in that case, John, I'm going to ask you to light Shabbat candles tonight for Jumping Right Shabbat candles. Yes.
Okay, sure.
Surprising, John. Page 120.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu b'hadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Please read with me on page 121 at the bottom of the page. O source of light and truth, creator of the eternal law of goodness, help us to find knowledge by which to live. Lead us to take the words we shall speak into our hearts and our lives. Bless all who enter this sanctuary in need, all who bring the offerings of their hearts. May our worship lead us to acts of kindness, peace, and love. Page 142, but before we join in Shalom Aleichem, take a moment, even with so many of us masked, and rotate 100, if you rotate 120, you'll crack your neck. But rotate a little and look at some of the other faces, even if they're covered, and wish each other Shabbat Shalom. And for those of you at home, I know I told you to turn off your phone, but if you still have them, text somebody Shabbat Shalom if they're not off yet, and say, Shabbat Shalom, how are you? Not me, I've got to focus on the service. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom Aleichem, Shalom Aleichem, Malekei Hasharet, Malekei Elyon, Mi Melech Malekei מלכי המלכים, הקדוש, הקדוש ברוך הוא. בואכם לשלום, מלכי השלום, מלכי עליון, ממלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. שלום עליכם, שלום עליכם, מלכי השרת, מלכי עליון, ממלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש, הקדוש ברוך הוא.
Page 145. Together. Teach me, O God, a blessing, a prayer, on the mystery of a withered leaf, on ripened fruit so fair, on the freedom to see, to sense, to breathe, to know, to hope, to despair. Teach my lips a blessing, a hymn of praise, as each morning and night you renew your days. Lest my day be today as the one before, lest routine set my ways. We rise on the next page for the Baruch Hu.
Arechu et Adonai HaMevorach, Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Leolam Vaed.
Page 148. Together. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, ruler of the universe, who skillfully opens the gates, thoughtfully alters the time, and changes the seasons, and arranges the stars in their heavenly courses according to plan. You are creator of day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness from light, transforming day into night and distinguishing one from the other. Adonai Tzvaot is your name. Ever-living God, may you reign continually over us into eternity. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on evening. Baruch atah Adonai, Hamariv Aravim.
Ahavat olam Yisrael, Amcha avta, Amcha avta, Torah u'mitzvot, Chukim u'mishpatim, Otanu limadeta, Otanu limadeta. Al ke'en Adonai Eloheinu b'shogbeinu, u'kumenu na'asiyak b'chukecha, v'nizmak b'divrei Toratecha, u'v'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed. Ki hem chayenu, ve'orech yameinu, uvahem negi yoman v'layla, negi yoman v'layla, ve'ahavatcha al tasir, mimenu le'olamim. Baruch atah Adonai, ohev Amo Israel, Ohev Amo Israel.
Page 152, as we join together, Hear, O Israel, God is one.
Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed.
Please be seated. We turn to page 155 as together we read in English these words of V'ahavta, these words from the Torah. You love your God with every heartbeat, with every breath, with every conscious act. Keep in mind the words I command you today. Teach them to your children. Talk about them at work, whether you are tired or you are rested. Guide the work of your hands. Keep them in the forefront of your vision. Do not leave them at the doorway of your house or outside your gate. They are reminders to do all of my mitzvot, so that you can be holy for God. I am Adonai, your God. I led you out of Egypt to become your God. I am Adonai, your God. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot. As together we turn to 158, as together we sing these words of freedom.
Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar bar kodesh, norat ha'ilot osef elei, norat ha'ilot osef elei, malechutecha ra'u banecha bokei hayam lifnei Moshe u'Miriam ze li'anu v'amru Adonai imloch Adonai imloch le'olam va'ed.
Page 160. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, v'ha'amidenu shomreinu l'chaim, uvros aleinu sukat shlomecha. Together at the bottom. Grant, O God, that we lie down in peace, and raise us up our guardian to life renewed. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Guide us with your good counsel. For your name's sake be our help. Shield and shelter us beneath the shadow of your wings. Defend us against enemies, illness, war, famine, and sorrow. Distance us from wrongdoing. For you, God, watch over us and deliver us. For you, God, are gracious and merciful. Guard our going and coming to life and to peace evermore. Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Jerusalem. Baruch atah Adonai, hapores sukat shalom aleinu, v'al kol amo Yisrael, v'al Yerushalayim. Page 162.
Yismechu v'malechutecha shomrei, shomrei, shomrei Shabbat וקורא עונג שבת. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי שבת, וקורא עונג שבת. מקדשי שבי שבת, עם ישמעו ויתענגו מטובך השבת. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי שבת, וקורא עונג שבת. ובשביעי רצית בו וקידשתו שבת. חמיין ימים אותו קראת השבת. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי שבת, וקורא עונג שבת. זכר למעשה בראשית שבת. זכר למעשה בראשית שבת. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי שבת, וקורא עונג שבת.
Thank you, Hans. So take a deep breath in. Take a deep breath out. We come to tefillah, which means prayer, which also means the central prayer section of our service. It speaks of our connection to Abraham and Sarah and Isaac and, of course, Jacob, who we will read of in this week's Torah portion, and Rachel and Leah. And as we connect to them and the generations that came before us and connect us to them, we look to 164 and we ask Maya to lead us in these next prayers, and the congregation rises.
Adonai Sifataif Tishtak Ufia Kita Hilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Eloheinu v'Imoteinu. Hey Abraham, Elohei Yitzhak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah. Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanara, El Elyon, Gomel Hasadim Tovim, V'Konei Hakol. V'zocher hasty avot v'imahot, u'mevi gula v'nei b'neihem, v'nushimon mehava, melech ozir u'mashiach u'magen, Baruch atah Adonai, magen Avraham, v'ezrat Sarah. Atah Gibor Olam Adonai, Mehaye Hakol atah Rav Leoshia, Mehahel Haim Ba'esed, Mehaye Hakol Berhamim Rabim, Saumek Nofalim Berofei Holim, Umatir Asorim, Ka'ayim Imunato, Lishonei Avad, Mikamo hakol. Baruch atah Adonai mehayei hakol.
Yom Yahweh Chasela, Baruch atah Adonai El HaKadosh. Page 173, we read together. May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. And may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh Hashem. Take a few moments standing, seated, however you like, to look over the next few pages, to take some time for personal Shabbat prayer and reflection.
Say shalom bimromav, say shalom aleinu, ve'akol Israel, va'imru, amen. Say shalom say shalom aleinu ve'akol Israel va'imru amen. Yaseh shalom shalom aleinu ve'akol Israel. Yaseh shalom shalom aleinu ve'akol Israel. Yaseh shalom shalom aleinu ve'akol Israel. Yaseh shalom shalom aleinu ve'akol Israel.
Tomorrow, Maya's going to read from, I think, chapter 47 of the book of Genesis. And I know she's going to do a beautiful job because I heard her practice. Benefit of being a rabbi. Some words of blessing between the sons together. I'm going to read just a few verses tonight, not from the part she's going to read from. I'd never do that. But from the last 4 verses of the book of Genesis, in which I know what I'm reading, but I'm blanking. It's good, I'll be translating it. In which Joseph is about to die and reminds his brothers that God will not forget them and to help them find their way out. So just a few verses. And when we finish, we say chazak, chazak, v'nit chazek, which means strong, strong, be strengthened. When we finish an actual book of the Torah, and we're finishing the book of Genesis, and we're going to just look at that. And I am going to ask Maya to help me open the doors of the ark. But I will be doing the reading tonight, and I'm going to ask the congregation to turn to page 364, and please rise. In this scroll is the secret of our people's life from Sinai until now. Its teaching is love and justice, goodness and hope. Freedom is its gift to all who treasure it.
Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah. Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah. Le'amo Israel b'kidushato. Shema Israel Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonenu Kedosh Shemo. Gadlu Adonai iti unromma Shemo Yachda. Lecha Adonai Hagadula V'Hagavula V'Havti Veret V'Hanetzach V'Hahod Ki Chol B'Shamayim U'Va'aretz Ki Chol B'Shamayim U'Va'aretz Lecha Adonai HaMelech V'Amin
You may be seated. If you have, I don't think we've done it in December. If you have a birthday in December, anybody in here have a birthday in December? Yay, Samay, I see one hand. Oh, I see a few more hands. You are welcome to come up. If you are more comfortable staying where you are, at least raise your hand again so we can say happy birthday. I see at least one person who isn't coming up, and I'm wishing you a happy birthday. Okay, that's all good. That's all good. Thank you. And I'm going to ask you guys, we'll all join in together in a moment for the Aliyah, and then I'm going to actually give you a job. Before I give you a job, I'm going to put this here. It's probably the safest thing. And for anyone else, and first off, we want to wish you a year to come of health and joy and all the things you maybe haven't done in the last year, all the good things. And for anyone watching at home was a birthday, may this year be a year of blessing and health. And we'll say more afterward, but let's go ahead. And for those of you who want to join in with them, it is 368 as we read from the end of the book of Genesis. Baruch et Adonai Hamvorach, Baruch Adonai Hamvorach leolam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah mimi. Natan lanu et Torato, Baruch ta Adonai noten HaTorah. And they were good. I was already looking at the Torah portion, so you corrected me. Good work. I think we're going to try this again. People at home like it, and you guys get to see it. So no one may ever get up again when they know I've put them to work. But I'm going to ask you to I'm going to ask you to give me a hand. I'm going to ask you to stand next to this scroll. Thank you, Samay. Ta-da. No one's ever going to volunteer again, right? And I'm going to ask you please, Martha, to stand and just kind of hold this scroll. And I'm going to try not to block for the people who are watching at home. I've gotten that comment, Rabbi, it was great to see you read, but you were standing in front of the Torah. So a little bit more. You can see, thank you, John, you can see where the book of Exodus begins, because there's this break in the beginning and end of every Torah portion, every book of the Torah, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus. And here is the Torah portion, and I'm going to just go right here. Vayar Yosef le'Ephraim b'nei Shalishim u'v'nei, I need new pair of glasses, u'v'nei Machir ben Menashe. Okay, and Joseph saw the children of Ephraim to the third generation, and he also saw Machir, the son of Manasseh. So Menashe, rather, would have been Menashe and Ephraim are his sons. So he saw his grandchildren and even his great-grandchildren, Yaldav al-Barchei Yosef, which means he saw their birth on almost on his leg, like he raised them as his own. Vayomer Yosef el Achiv, and Joseph said to his brothers, Anochi mate, I am about to die. Ve'Elohim pakod yivchod etchem. Now, that kind of grammatical usage is the repetition of two words to add emphasis. So if pakod is you will attain, or I will come back or deliver, then God says, surely I will come back to you, to v'ha'aleh etchem, to bring your descendants min ha'aretz hazot, from out of this land. Sorry, I really do need the dark new glasses. El ha'aretz asher nishpa, the land that I have promised to you, to Avraham, to Yitzchak, to Yaakov, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. Vayishba Yosef el b'nei Yisrael lemor. And furthermore, Joseph spoke to the children of Israel, saying to them, Pakod yivchod. So he's emphasizing this. He's repeating the same thing again. God will surely, Elohim etchem, bring you out. V'halitem et atzmo, from this place. Mizeh, from this place. You will bring me out from here, from this place. And Joseph died when he was Mea v'Esar, 110 shanim, 110 years old. Vayechanchu, and they embalmed him. Little interesting editorial note. That means that Joseph was buried as prominent Egyptians were, such as Pharaoh and his followers. Oto, he was embalmed. Vayasim ba'aron b'Mitzrayim, and he was buried in a box in Egypt. So we know that Joseph was very prominent. We know that he was highly respected. And we know that he is repeating the promise that God has made, that whatever awaits you in the future, you will bring me out of here, and God will bring you out of here. And we say, Chazak, Chazak, V'nit Chazek. Strength, strength, may you be strengthened. Although at the very bottom of the Torah is too dark for me, so not a good time to learn your vision. And we'll join in, I'll get out of the way here, and we'll join in the blessing after reading from the Torah.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tocheinu, Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
And to you, and to you, and to anybody else having a birthday this month, we say, Yevarecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chunecha. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May God guard you and watch over you. May you feel God's presence in the times you need it and in the times you don't need it. And may God give you in this year the blessings of peace and strength. Shalom. And we say amen, and we say happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you both for volunteering me, probably getting more than you were banking on. So I really appreciate that. We continue with a prayer for healing. Before we return the Torah to the Ark, should you wish to follow, it is 371. And so we ask on this Shabbat, may God bring healing to all who are broken, all who are in need. Our prayers go out to Len Anthony, Robert Bogan, Fred Boyd, Gordon Brody, Maria Schoen, Karen Delavan, Kevin Delavan, Brittany Elaine Drake, Charlotte Fiwis, Harry Phillip, Mike Fox, Clark Freebie, Sherry Goldstein, Michelle Hartman, Stacy Lewis, Christopher Long, Terry Mann, Sophie Aubry, Jody Platt, Katrina Joy Rogers, Bob Schmitz, Lee Schultz, Renee Stanton, Neil Tannenhouse, Sarah Tova, William Westerman, Ann Westerman, Judith Zimmerman, Leonard Furstenfeld, Dan Gestring, Daryl Abrams, Corrine Jacobson, Deborah Lavelle, Judy Kotler Goldberg, Lori Brigman, Amy Stein, Edie Yentis, and Peter Levy. If there are other names you'd like to add as I look around the congregation, you can now. Thank you. Baruch atah Adonai Rofei HaCholim. May God help us to find the strength within to find healing and bring healing to all who are in need.
Mi sheberach avotenu mekor habracha lamotenu. May the source of strength bless the ones before us. Help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misheberach imotenu mekor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shelema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
We rise to return the Torah to the Ark.
Aleinu l'shabeach le'adon Hold on, Rabbi, I'm sorry.
Could have kept going.
I jumped past. We can go back. Go to all edits. Odo aletz v'shamayim v'yarem keren le'amo ta'ila lekal chasinav livnei Israel am kerov bo. Alleluia, 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 alleluia. Etz Kain
now we turn to page 586, and we actually planned that so that Maya would know that if you make a mistake, it's no big deal, you just move on, right? Now we did. 586, we continue with Aleinu. Please be seated. In this Shabbat, we pause to reflect on those who have passed away in the days and weeks and months and years that have passed. They live on in our hearts and minds, in our memories and in our names, in our dishes and our celebrations, our losses. And so we remember them on the anniversary of their deaths and try to live to the best that they showed us. It is our custom for those who wish to rise when you hear the name of one for whom you are marking a yahrzeit, and then together we all rise to support you. And so at this end of 30-day period of mourning known as Shloshim, we mention the name of Moshe Epstein, father of Hudi Epstein. And we add the yahrzeits, the anniversaries of their deaths, of these names in this week, of Mark Ulrich, Elaine Mothner, Bob Mothner, Ann P. Aston, Fortune Babani, Phyllis Beck, Grace Marie Ford Bentley, Marie Friedman Berger, David Brown, Helen Shields Cohen, Abraham Jacob Kulis, David Eisenman, Leon Friedman, Jacob Gernsbacher, Frank Greenbaum, Ruth Cantor, Malcolm Mickey Cohn, Gertrude Lehrer, Ruth Maislich, Isidore Marks, Harry Sam Miller, Ethel Minker, Frida Myron, Peggy Norris, Will S. Nuremberg, Marguerite Reitman, Dora Levy-Roddy, Ann W. Fred Rolnick, Dorothy Rosenstein, Bernard Bubba Rubin, Barbara Rubin, Max Stenzler, Bernice Beanie Whale. For them and so many others that we may be thinking of this Shabbat, even if it is not their yahrzeit, we rise. Page 598, we join together. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, bi'alma divra chirute v'yamlich malchute, v'chayechon v'yomechon, v'chaye d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agalal v'izman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam u'lalmei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, V'yitadar v'yitale v'yitala shmeid kudsha brichu leila min kol berchata v'shirata Tushbachata v'nechamata, da'amiram bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Zichronam livracha, may their memories be to us for a blessing as we remember them. And let us say, Amen. Please be seated. Our closing song
Is L'Dor Vador.
L'Dor Vador. Thank you.
We are gifts and we are blessings. We are history in song. We are hope and we are healing. We are learning to be strong. We are words and we are stories. We are pictures of the past. We are carriers of wisdom, not the first and not the last. L'Dor Vador nagid od lecha. L'Dor Vador we protect this chain from generation to generation. L'Dor Vador, these lips will praise your name. Looking back on the journey that we carry in our hearts, from the shadow of the mountain to the waters that would part. We are blessed and we are holy. We are children of your way, and the words that bring us meaning, we will have the strength to say. L'Dor Vador nagid od lecha. L'Dor Vador we protect this chain from generation to generation. L'Dor Vador, these lips will praise your name.
Thank you. As we turn to 123 for the Kiddush, I want to thank you. Hans, we want to wish you a Merry Christmas. That's what you'll be doing next week. For those of you who won't be out with us the next couple weeks, we want to wish you a Happy New Year. A reminder that our service will end at 7 next week because the MRJ is having their Chinese food and trivia night right afterwards. So if you're coming to that, even if you're watching at home and you're coming, you have to RSVP before next Friday, probably before next Wednesday, so please do that. And also the following week, if you're planning to watch services, we will be at 6:15, but I guess you could turn it on at 11:15 because we're going to attempt, I won't tell you what because it might not work out. We're going to attempt to create a Jewish symbol that will drop over 10 seconds, just the way the ball drops. It could be a dismal failure. I make no promises. Come back in 2 weeks for nothing else, but we're going to try to time that. Having said that, Shabbat Shalom. Join us in the blessing over wine, page 123.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kosho be'ahava uvratzon hinkilanu, zikaron l'maaseh bereshit. Ki hu yom tehila lamikrae kodesh, zecher le'tzion Mitzrayim. Ki banu v'acharta, v'yotanu kidashta, michol amim, v'shabbat koshecha, be'avar uvratzon, Inchaltanu, Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat. Amen.
Chaim, and on your way out, there'll be snacks and there will be little challahs, right? So thank you, Linda, for that. And I would never put Maya on the spot with Hebrew, but I'm going to put you on the spot to lift up the challah. Want to do that? No? Just kind of hold it while I lead the Mosi. She's like, you promised you wouldn't put me on the spot. But this is not a hard job. You just get to hold the challah plate. No surprises tomorrow, I promise. We're going to join together the blessing over bread, right? Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, you don't need it.
Sorry about that.
No one else has touched it. You want it? That, I'll tell you, I'll even give you a bag. You can even bring it home or take a bite. No?